Attention, we're going to go ahead and start. We are recording this as part of an online meeting. So we have a recording of it for people who couldn't be here or who want to review it at some point. So there will be a live mic the whole time. It will pick up a lot of extra conversation. So if possible, keep your side stuff down. That would really help us. Certainly, if you have a question, ask it. Make sure you speak up. So let me get rid of this. I'm going to go through some of our general business first. There's my ass. It's nice. All right. What, did you like that? You wanted to see that? I can put that back up for you.
It's gorgeous.
All right, it is. It is a lot of work in that answer. All right. Now this doesn't work. So just work. All right, I'll just hit the buttons. Maybe that one. Beautiful. There we go. All right. So Dino is not here. He's probably taking his daughter back to York. JP, assigning.
Still about 120 games that I need to assign. Just haven't gotten around to them yet. There's still a bunch of games that are being turned back because you haven't accepted them by the assigned date. What happens, guys, if you don't accept it, a block is put in if you didn't accept it. So like I said, if you're 51% sure you can work the game, just accept it and we'll deal with it later. Like I said, all I need is a day and I'll get it reassigned. But a lot of you or not a lot of you, a couple games are being taken away or unassigned because you haven't accepted them by the assigned date. If you think that's happened and you want to talk about it, send me an email, send me a text, and we can figure out what that date is. But, you know, once it takes it back, I'm just going to start filling them with somebody else. Those 120, I hope to have them assigned. I hope to have the whole season assigned by Wednesday, and then just deal with turnbacks from there on out.
Okay. Chris, do you want to give an update on the contract?
Sure. We met again in January with the officials committee, and then which is the DIA side of things, and then all the officials groups met on the 21st, I think, February, just a couple Wednesdays ago. You know, the way the contract is set up is it's a perpetual contract that we sign every season, but we can always negotiate different issues. So there was a proposal, a state raise of 2%. So if that's approved, that will be our raise for the next season. Which would be $1 at every level. There's that. There's also some movement to maybe work on the administrative fee. We can talk about upping that from maybe 3 to 4%, which we could then would actually be a raise for us too, because as now we use the 3% and get 5% from the officials to get 8. If we were to say get 4 out of the contract, they could just take 4 from the guy. So that would be the effective 1% raise.
I'm sure JP likes to try doing that.
Yeah, right. So,
Glad you brought that up already. We didn't talk about it. But
no. And well, there's also some thought to going back to a 3-year after and trying to get a 3-year agreement to get through. We have to go through this every year. The next meeting is, I believe, set for March 19th with the DIA. So I'll have more report to that one.
Okay. How long are you president? How long?
My term's up in May. I haven't decided when right now.
Okay.
I don't know.
Mike, anything new on the youth?
Not sure if I told you guys already. The on-field for the youth officials training is on the 18th at Caravel. I don't know about time or not.
Yeah, we have it. It looks like it's probably going to be 9 to 1.
Okay.
Right? And it's going to be really weather contingent, whether or not we have one field. They'll let us use the stadium field, which is really nice because it's Exeter. But if it's been like if it were to be today, or would have been today, it would have been only use one field. So we may get really strapped for games.
And so, I mean, if need be, I'll do just like single on field like during the year on the first week. And if anyone can help me out with that, that would be great. We can discuss that. I was just told this week that Milford is playing in the Camden Cape League, which is on Saturdays. So I'm hoping they don't try to do the same day because that's going to be pushing for guys. Just always remember JP comes first. If you guys are willing to help out on Saturdays and Sundays, that would be great. You haven't emailed me already, please email me. That way I can add you to the contact list. So when I send emails out.
You must be a U.S. lacrosse member to do youth games.
Yes, and it's $50 a week. If you guys want to, I'll add you to the list. I'll send out on Sundays, and we'll go from there.
All right, any questions about any of that? Okay, are we all good? All right, a couple of things that I didn't put into the presentation. Communication, again, I'll remind you, if you have issues, questions, problems, you probably should start with your reps, and Shaw Fu is the upstate rep, and Mike Hernandez is the downstate rep. They can answer most of your questions, or they can help refer you to the right place to get the answers to your questions. You can always email me, that's fine, but that's a good way to start that communication. If you have questions, issues, problems, and they'll bring those to the board. I started putting a lot of stuff on the Facebook page. Even if you're not a Facebook person, I posted the link before. The link is also on our website. You can go to that page just like you can any other web page. So like I posted I found a bunch of great articles in Referee Magazine, some really stuff I think is relevant to the beginning of the season, that really speaks to some of the stuff that we've spoken about, just as far as kind of the art of refereeing and dealing with coaches, dealing with players, you know, those kind of things that aren't really in the rule book, but are really what we need to know to referee. U.S. Lacrosse puts out the You Make a Call every week during the season. The only place I can really post that is on that Facebook page. So if you're not a regular Facebook user, either become one and hide yourself and only do that, or you can just click that link and only see the stuff that we're posting. And I recommend you do that. If you are on Facebook, especially the You Make the Calls or other stuff, if you want to start a discussion, that's a great place to start a discussion. Just remember, if you're discussing things about games you had, we're not talking specific coaches, specific schools, but if there was a situation and you want to have a discussion online, that's a great place to do that. All right.
One question, and that our page, there's no privacy on our page, so it's open.
It's open, yeah,
Everybody.
yeah. So if you just, I put the link up before,
Any
but
random person can.
yeah,
see our page.
Facebook.com, Delaware Referees or something like that.
Yeah.
Boom. You can't interact with it unless you're, you know, you have a Facebook account. But you can read all those articles, see the videos, all that kind of stuff.
And just to reinforce what you're saying, what you put up so far has been great. There's a lot of really good stuff out there, and it can't help but create better consistency if everybody's seeing the same things and you're hearing the same evaluations of situations and everything else. It becomes much less arbitrary on your part. When you've seen these things, you'll go right to that and say, oh, I remember this before. That's been really good.
Yeah. I'm going to try to do that throughout the season. If you find stuff, you know, I think you guys can post to our page. But certainly if you find an article you want posted, send it to me, send it to Chris Petrone, send it to JP. We can put it up there. I've also in the past put our Instagram and Twitter accounts. If you want to take a picture of yourself or your crew before a game, you know, throw it up there and share it. Those things end up on our Facebook page. You know, it's just a good way to interact and show people who we are and show that we're part of the community. Other events coming up. We talked about this. The 6th is the DLOA Banquet and Golf Classic. There'll be more about that later. I did confirm with Coach Kowaleski that he's going to speak this year. CR. He helped at APO recently. He's an assistant coach for Delta Tech. One of the real early movers in Delaware lacrosse. I ran into him the other day, and he told some great stories about Doc and some other stuff early. So I think that'll be really good. If you know Coach Kopaleski, he's a good guy, especially when he's not the head coach. Tuesday, June 12th is the Senior All-Star game in DLOA tailgate. A couple things with that. There will be more than one game going on this year, I think. It's going to be at Dover High School, and they have 2 lighted fields, and there's talk of an underclassmen game and some other stuff.
I think they want to run outside of keys.
Right. And so we're going to bring back, by popular demand, the tailgate. And we're going to also recognize our youth officials there, because a lot of them, will hopefully be there playing or part of it, or at least maybe that'll help bring more people out. The rest of our meeting schedule are on field on the 13th at 6 o'clock. That's very important to be at. I think it'll be great. We're going to run a bunch of stations. I think that'll help with consistency in particular parts of our mechanics. And then we'll have another meeting on the 18th, and that's the one Frank will talk about, being a crew chief. That's our last meeting before we start. And then April 15th will be a lot about play situations. We also elect our up and down state reps at that meeting.
Greg, the uniform for 13th is normal, everything?
Yep, uniform for that is your regular uniform. Probably plan on longs and longs. If a few of us show up a little bit different, that's not going to be a big deal at that. I'll try to remember to send something out before, kind of with the uniform of the day. So we talked about that. Chris and I have talked a little bit about where to have a little after party. So we'll get to that. Kevin was here. He's leaving. Did everybody get stuff from Kevin? Make sure you have everything. Don't forget our uniform policy is on the website. Everybody's got to be dressed the same, and there's some certain parameters. Concussion course, again, I spoke about that. If you disagree with what I have on the sign-in sheet, let me know. If it says it's due now, you need to take the concussion course at nfhslearn.com. Email the certificate to dloaref@gmail.com. If you forget that, send it to me.
Anywhere we can get American flag patches that you don't have.
Kevin.
Walmart's got them too, I think. Amazon's got them.
They all kind of the same.
Yeah.
It's a 3-inch.
Yep, just a little 3-inch flag. If you did not go to the DIA clinic, you need to make that up by tomorrow. I'll be getting a list from Terry. That's a must to officiate games. All you have to do is go through the presentations and take a quiz at the end, and that submits automatically. And then Terry at the IAA tells me who passed it and who didn't. The NFHS test is available now on the Arbiter DIAA hub. It's going to close on the 30th, ever before, so don't get stuck. Once it closes, it's closed. You got 2 chances to make it 85% or better. You don't have to send me the result necessarily. If you do, I don't care. That's fine. I just put it in the folder in my email. But I'll get all those results from Terry. This is the NFHS created test, not the one at US Lacrosse, uslacrosse.org. Just make sure you're taking the right test. And after it closes, there's no way to take it again. So if you have questions, please ask. If you're in another group, so if you're working in Bayside, you're working up in GPLOA, you're in SLOA2, and you take the NFHS test through them, just send me your result. I'll look at it real quick and make sure it's the right test. If you don't hear from me, you took the right test. If you hear from me, I'll tell you took the wrong one. But you don't have to take the test multiple times as long as you take it for another association, and it's the NFHS test. If you're new to the group, and I talked to the applicant class, and anybody who's transferring in, you're not going to be in there yet. Dean will get your names in there this week to the DIAA. You'll be in there. I'll let you know as soon as you're there, and you can take the test. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to skip that. Scrimmages. So we thought JP assigned a bunch of play days. All right, and then there's individual scrimmages on self-assigned. You should be doing at least a couple of scrimmages. They are unpaid scrimmages. Okay, and that's the DIAA policy, so don't go on Facebook and bitch that you're not getting paid for scrimmages. It's not our fault.
Anybody, I don't remember who I signed to the Cape Play Day, but they're now down to 2 fields, 11, 12, 1 and 2. I'll make the changes and send it back out. You guys will all still be there, and you can still use the, whatever you want to do with that, so, but I'll have to make the changes. He just sent it to me when I just got here,
So
so.
2 deals for 4 hours, right? 3.
Yeah, they're down a couple teams, I think, and they just finalized it, so I'll get it done tomorrow, and I'll send it back out.
All right. Don't do a scrimmage. Go ahead, Frank.
Greg, I think you covered the last meeting, but you want everybody to wear uniforms, full uniforms for the scrimmages.
Yeah.
Right, Kevin Clark is not here, who would wear shorts no matter what the temperature was.
Clark was the shorts all year round.
Yeah,
Well, and Bob's.
but I mean, if one guy shows up in pants and the other guy's in shorts,
That's not the end of the world, especially if guys pick it up at the last minute. Try to communicate with your partners and wear the same thing, but if you're a little off for a scrimmage, we're not going to worry about that. But all the other uniform requirements are in place. If you took a self-assigned scrimmage, okay, and you're the only one that took it, the day before the event, contact JP, see if we can get somebody else in it, but do not, under any circumstances, show up and do a scrimmage by yourself. Okay, even though there's scrimmages and there's supposedly practice, the coaches like to practice too. Okay, and sometimes it won't go well for you.
Is this liability issues?
There is a liability issue there. There's a bad blood issue. It's just not a good practice. So if the night before you notice nobody else picked up the scrimmage, or the guy who picked it up says, I can't make it, contact JP, see if we can find somebody else to work it with you. If not, they just won't have anybody. And when you do the scrimmages, only use the approved mechanics for 2 or 3 person, but based on your level. Okay, don't show up and do a 4-person mechanic. It doesn't do anybody any good. You're not kind of getting that muscle memory back. You're also going to confuse the hell out of the kids when there's guys in all 4 corners and in different places. You're going to catch things you shouldn't catch, all that. So only use the 2 or 3 person mechanics. And I would add, I know, the whole running left thing, we want you to run left this year, but that's up to your crew, as what you guys want to do in the scrimmages, please run left. Get used to it, see if you like it. I think you guys are all going to like doing it. It's much easier. It puts you right in the right spot without any problems and all that. So we want you to run left, but we understand some of you guys have been running the wrong way for a long time. And with the change in the face-off mechanics, it's hard to get used to something different. So, and work with the coaches, blame things, let them slow things down. It's their scrimmage. So if you show up and they say, hey, we want to do 30 minutes of 6-on-6 at each end of the field, and then we want to run 2 quarters, it's their scrimmage. That's fine. Okay. Don't get yourself in a position where you're there for 3 hours, But if it's within the reason of a game, if you're going to be there for 90 minutes, that's cool. Any questions? All right. So now we're going to go to the training portion. We're going to switch over. David Seidman is going to talk about principles of advantage and disadvantage. And for those of you who don't know David, let me get my bio. Give me it's really long bio. So David Seidman has officiated lacrosse at every level from youth to pro. He's been a member of the NFHS Rules Committee since 2012 and is currently the chair of the NFHS Rules Committee. And he's very humble.
U.S. Lacrosse Rules Committee, not the NFHS.
The NFHS.
Do you know who the chair of the
Rules Committee.
NFHS Rules Committee is?
Tommy.
Yes, it is.
I mean, you are. So, and David also, when I did Laredo years ago, he was the clinician. And also I did a thing a couple of years ago at Goucher. And David was one of the observers. He's a great bank of knowledge and really has a great perspective and is very helpful.
Okay, pop this off.
Pop this out. You should find
It's
it.
going to show up as an auxiliary screen, so I should be able to. Well,
It's coming.
And then you still have the mic, right?
Yeah, keep it like on.
My thing here.
Let me just set it up.
So while you're setting up, I have a story about Mr. Seidman. It was
Oh, boy.
years ago, one of my first games.
Maybe we should wait till after he's done.
One of my first games with, everybody knows who David Simon is in college. Oh, I got a game with David Simon. So I walk in the locker room, nervous, get out on the field. First quarter, timeout, walk up to him. Got anything for me? He said, no. He walks through, he goes, why the hell does my piss smell after I get asparagus? I was fine for the rest of the game. He was fine for the rest of the season. Very calming force. He knows everything. Anything we're going to learn from him tonight, use it. Absolutely.
No, he never answered.
I still can't tell him either.
He's an English teacher.
No, I can't spell it either.
I found out there's more than one way to spell it. Okay, so we're going to talk about advantage, disadvantage fouls. We're gonna talk a lot. I've got some video. I don't have a PowerPoint for this kind of thing. I've been getting away from PowerPoint because we put words up on the screen and then people read the on it here, which is what we're going to talk about. So we'll demonstrate some things. We'll get some volunteers. I think Greg will demonstrate slashes on JP, and anybody who wants to can demonstrate cross checks to the head on Frank, and we'll have some fun. This advantage disadvantage topic is very hot, and there's not a lot of consensus on it. I got into I can't say I got into a heated argument because it was one side. I was just a target. At one of the last college games I officiated, I retired from the college level last year. There are coaches who believe that as officials, we should be calling what's in the book as it's written in the book and not making any judgment outside of that. There are officials who believe that. I am not one of them. There are times when we do need to follow the book. You still need to know the book. But one of my mentors, and a guy who actually started around the same time as me and had officiated high-level football before he ever came to lacrosse, and who knew how to referee, although I think he read the rule book in a 35-year career. I think he read the rule book twice. I won't mention Buzzy's name, but talked about there being 3 fouls in any sport. 3 fouls. Safety foul. If something is dangerous, puts a player at risk for harm, injury, that should be a foul. Right? There are big legal hits that may injure someone that aren't a foul. But if something is unsafe, if the act is inherently unsafe, that is most likely a foul. Most safety fouls are personal fouls, slashes, cross checks to the head, as we talked about before. The second type of foul is the advantage-disadvantage foul. And that's when a player is put at an unfair disadvantage under the rules, or a player creates an unfair advantage for himself under the rules. And the third type of foul is the foul that everyone in the stadium sees. What's a safety foul? Slash, right? Illegal body check, high hit. Can a technical foul be a safety foul? Most of the fouls we've talked about as far as safety fouls are personal fouls. Could a technical foul could be a safety foul? Yeah, absolutely, right? Are there technical fouls that could cause an injury? There are. I think there are anyway, and it sounds like we agree. What's an advantage-disadvantage foul? What do we talk about when we talk about the concept of advantage-disadvantage? I already said it. We talked about the foul that puts another player at an unfair disadvantage, or puts himself, the player that puts himself at an unfair advantage. But is it a foul every time a player gains an advantage?
No.
Okay, no, right? Sometimes a good play puts a player at an advantage or puts his opponent at a disadvantage. So that's not what we're talking about when we talk about advantage-disadvantage fouls. We're not talking about every time a player is put at a disadvantage. A good dodge puts the defender at a disadvantage. It may put him on his heels. It may trap him against a pick. That's not necessarily a foul. It might be, but just the players put at a disadvantage or a player puts himself at an advantage does not make it a foul. Right? It's got to be an unfair advantage or disadvantage, which generally means something that's not by the book. And that's where knowing the rule really comes into play. It becomes very important. You've got to know what the push rule says. You have to know what the hold rule says. You have to know what the warding off rule says, even with the new interpretation, which wasn't new to us, but apparently is new to a lot of people based on the feedback. Do you guys get that interpretation? Yeah.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay, I'll talk about it too.
Good. I was glad you were going to be here. Have a couple of.
But we'll talk about that. Have you guys seen the new? It's a memo that came out from the Federation last week, I think. Has it been passed around yet?
We put it on the Facebook page.
Okay.
We're going to talk about it.
We'll talk about it plenty, but basically what it says is a ball carrier, if a ball carrier has two hands on the stick, he can't be called for a ward. He can be called for a foul, but he can't be called for a ward. And we'll talk about that. We'll go through some examples. I have a little bit of film, but it's not terribly clear. Just because it's the advantage disadvantage files, there's so much film of high hits and slashes on the internet. US Lacrosse, Gordon Corsetti's collected a whole bunch of fantastic film on big hits and on big pushes, and some on moving picks. But there's very little on the little advantage disadvantage files that we're going to talk about. There's not a lot of video out there just because it doesn't show up well on video. And nobody bothers to take a picture of the tiny little push that caused a guy to miss a scoop or to go out of bounds that we're going to talk about. So I wasn't as successful coming up with video, even though I've been looking for a month. I collected some stuff that we'll look at, and I actually got some film emailed from games yesterday that may have shown a little bit too that we'll look at. Okay, so is advantage, disadvantage described in the book? The concept we're going to talk about, advantage, disadvantage, is it described in here? There's no right answer here, so don't be afraid to answer. It's not really described in black and white, right? There's nothing in here that talks about what is an advantage and what is an advantage disadvantage foul. But you could say that the entire book is about that. Other than the safety things, we could say that every rule in here, and certainly every technical foul, outside of safety, is about advantage disadvantage. How do we judge whether or not someone put himself at an unfair advantage or put his opponent at an unfair disadvantage? Let's take a look. Could an advantage, when we talk about unfair disadvantage, we'll go through some fouls here, and I'm not going to read them to you. How many people have a book here? All right. Could an advantage disadvantage foul be a safety issue? Just to get this one out of the way.
Yeah. High hold. Push.
Okay. It's a technical foul that could be a safety issue. But if it's a high hold, when we talk about advantage, disadvantage, what we're really talking about is deciding whether or not to call something that's not by the book. That's by the book generally illegal. And if it's illegal by the book and it creates a safety issue, we're going to call it every time, right? If it's illegal by the book and it did not create an advantage or disadvantage, if it did create an advantage, disadvantage, and it's illegal by the book, then it's by definition it's unfair, and that's the kind we're going to call. But if it's illegal by the book and it did not put anyone at a disadvantage or put the perpetrator at an advantage, it's a big word, but we're in a state police thing, so I think you guys did that. It didn't create an advantage, unfair. It did not create an advantage or disadvantage. It may not be a foul, and this is where the coaches some of the coaches get hopped. You didn't call that, and that was a push. I can show you in the video that was a push. Okay, the guy had the ball. He was going away from the goal. He got a little push by the book. We'll read what that says. But he didn't lose the ball, he didn't fall down, he didn't take an extra step.
Right.
He was never put at a disadvantage. Is that a foul? By the book, it's a foul. Is it a call? I don't know. I tend to think not. That's where even this kind of presentation, when it's done at the convention, creates more complaints to U.S. lacrosse than any other kind of presentation. The coaches who sit there and watch it say, they are telling people not to call fouls when the rule is broken. All right? That's the same coach who says that center line is only 3 inches wide. Right? I measured that goal. The post has sunk into the ground, and the inside measurement is 5'11.5". And I want the ball and 3 minutes. Okay? Is he wrong? By definition, by book, is he wrong? Do we entertain it? God, I hope not. But what do you tell Tommy Neubauer when the coach calls the PIA, the DIA? What do you tell him when the coach calls and said, I pointed out a field violation and he wouldn't call it, he refused to call it? What do you tell him? I don't have all the answers here. And that's the problem with advantage, disadvantage. We don't have all the answers. We're going to discuss the situations. I have suggestions. We can talk about them here. But none of these are easy. None of these are black and white. None of them have the correct answer. I can tell you what I would do and what I suggest. But some of these they're based on common sense and what you see. So, without too much further ado, since I've already talked you all to death, let's start with award. If you have your book, the award is 611. It's on page 77. And if you don't have a book, don't worry about it. I'm going to read it to you. And this is where the PowerPoint might come in. I can put it up on the screen, but I can put it up on the screen anyway. It doesn't matter. Warning off: a player in possession of the ball. That's pretty clear, right? I'm gonna do it. And the stick's not exactly legal. I can demonstrate a award. The ball's not going anywhere. A player in possession of the ball shall not use his free hand or arm. Let's go over this point by point. Shall not use his free hand or arm, or any other part of his body. That's where we're probably going to change that next year. Or any other part of his body to hold, push, or control the direction of the movement of the cross or body of the player applying the check. Okay, so the player applying the check is the defender. A player in possession of the ball may protect his cross with his hand or arm or other part of his body, hopefully not his head, when his opponent makes a play to check his cross. Okay, let's go back. Player in possession of the ball shall not use his free hand or arm. And here's where we get in trouble right off the bat. His free hand or arm. Does it say his free hand or his free arm?
No.
It doesn't. Does it mean that?
Yes.
Yeah, we think at the committee level, we think it does mean that. But it doesn't say that.
Wow.
Talk to me. What's that? Let's discuss it here.
So they were saying the fact that an arm on the stick.
Yeah, well,
That's why you're making the clarification.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. The intention of that rule is a player shall not use his free hand or his free arm. But that's not what it says.
Yes.
And that has led to a lot of confusion. Now, for those of us who've been around doing some college games since the 1980s, we never did call a ward with the player if the attackman had two hands on the stick. We just didn't call it. We were taught that way. As people started actually reading the rule book, which we never did, that's not really true. Then these questions came up, and it's not the fault of anyone, and we're calling this differently in different parts of the country, in different parts of the state, different parts, not your state, in different parts of my state. This is being called differently. There's been, according to some people, there's been an explosion of warding off calls when the offender had two hands on the stick. All right, I don't know how you've been calling that here, but my guess is you haven't been calling that much.
We've always known how to try to teach it that way. It doesn't mean it always gets applied that way.
Right, and also, Greg,
There's always that guy in the stands that shows up every game that yells for a award for anything.
Oh my God.
Same guy.
How many times have you been doing a game and you thought that one of the kids was named Ward because so many people were screaming his name.
There's also a guy named Bull, too.
But they're related. So can I have a volunteer? I'm not going to hurt anybody.
House right there.
I'm going to give you a stick.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, pick him a little guy, that's right.
I'm going to be the ball carrier because I got the cheater.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's great. My stepson set a school record goals with this thing. None of this is true, by the way. So it's okay. That's okay. I'm old enough. I don't really care what goes on. And I'm not on a college field, so they can use this against me all they want. What we used to see most of the time was a pretty simple. Maybe I use an elbow here and roll off it. I am not swinging an elbow into his chest. If I at most, it's probably going to be equal pressure, right? But I may be using my arm either to roll a little bit, never taking my hands off the stick. The other one is when you come in with the stick and I want to pass, I may raise my lower hand up, which raises his stick up. That creates space for me to make the pass. Have any of you called that Ward?
No.
Okay, you haven't. So I'm preaching to the choir here. That's being called all over the country, mostly by developing areas. I mean, when this memo went out last week, you would not believe the squawk. Yes.
Well, we have a little bit of trouble with understanding how to call a bull dodge, but I'll let you continue.
No, and that's exactly what we're gonna talk about. Okay. One of the concepts that is presented to the Rules Committee every year. That's presented to the Rules Committee before we start our meeting every year. It's a little lesson on writing rules and some general concepts about writing rules. And one of the things they harp on the most is balance between offense and defense. And this is a presentation that they give to NCAA committees of every sport and federation committees of every sport. Balance between offense and defense. We should avoid writing rules that create an imbalance between offense and defense. That may allow one side to do something that the other side cannot. Right? What is he allowed to do to me as he's the defender and I'm the ball carrier? What is he allowed to do?
Check your glove.
He's allowed to check my hand. He's also allowed to, there are legal holds, right? We're going to read that next. There are legal holds. As long as he doesn't use the cross here, if you hold the stick back like that, with his hand on the cross, he's allowed to hold me with that glove or that forearm. He's allowed to actually hold me. He's even, from the back, he can hold me with equal pressure. From the front or side, he can even, a check, or he can push me, right? That's a legal push. From the front or side, if he's got two hands on the stick,
but they have to keep
either hands together, right? That he can push me from the side like that or from the front. If I'm the ball carrier, he can move his hand. If his hand's covering the base of the stick, he can push me with the forearm. That's a legal defensive play. Why would it be illegal for me? We're not talking about, again, I'm not throwing an elbow. He can't do that to me and I can't do it to him. But why am I not allowed to fend off a little bit with that hand on the bottom of the stick? I can't do it with the free arm or free hand. Free arm or free hand, that's what the intent of the rule is, even though it doesn't say that. What's the reason that I shouldn't be able to do it with this? There are things that he is allowed to do to me that I can't do to him. What would one of those things be? We talked about it a little bit. We talked about the bull dodge. Is he allowed to body check me? Why? He is, right? As long as it's legal. Let's assuming it's a legal body check. What gives him, what in the rule book says he's allowed to body check?
You got the ball.
That's right. I have the ball. He's allowed to body check the ball carrier or someone within 5 yards of a loose ball, right? Can I body check him? No, he doesn't have the ball. Can I put my shoulder down and run him over? No. At the NCAA, they were told recently not to call that. At the federation level, we are told to call that. What's the call? But if I use my head, it's exactly. If I put my head into him, have you seen this? This is coming around more and more. The ball carrier putting a head down and running right through somebody. That's an illegal body check. That's a 2-minute non-releasable foul. But can I put my chest in and pull him over? There's a situation in the book that tells us what to call there. Unnecessary roughness, especially if he's stationary. The wording's a little strong in the book. We're probably going to address that this coming summer. The wording says, the situation says, and we can read it, if a ball carrier, in a typical bulldog dodge, I think is what it says, runs over a stationary defender, ruling unnecessary roughness if the contact is violent or excessive. Okay? If a ball carrier runs over a defender, puts the shoulder down and does what you judge as a body check, we want that called unnecessary roughness. Okay? But what the memo said, and what the gist of the memo is when it talks about advantage, disadvantages, number one, a ball carrier with two hands on the stick is not to be called for warding off. I didn't write it. It was written by James Weaver, the Secretary Rules Editor. It's not wrong. It's just a little stronger. It's black and white. It cannot be called. And then the last part, which is the critical part, is if there is contact with, I don't remember exactly what I said. If there's contact from a ball carrier to a defender, your choices are unnecessary roughness, if you think the contact is strong enough, and if there's an elbow thrown, even if I have two hands on the stick, that's an unnecessary roughness. If I put my head down, that's a spearing, that's illegal contact, contact initiated with the head, that's at least a 2-minute foul, non-releasable. And if I run through him with a shoulder, I body check him, again, that's an unnecessary roughness foul. But what the memo says, and what the rule will hopefully say when we finish writing it this summer for next year, is if the ball carrier has two hands on the stick, it's either, and you're going to call something, you either have a personal foul or you have nothing. There is no technical foul possible here. And that takes it away from the advantage disadvantage. It makes it completely a safe condition. Okay, I talked a lot about it in the advantage disadvantage talk, but it's critical. And we're going to talk about it, I think you're going to talk about it more afterwards. This is a huge area. It's probably the most important thing coming up in the game right now. Frank?
Have you seen anything, or has there been any discussion about an offensive player doing that, running in with the elbow high and hitting the defensive player in the head?
I haven't seen that, but that's what, when we did a clinic in Florida 2 weeks ago, and this is where we first brought this up, and that's what they said they have seen at times, is swinging the elbow. I can't imagine that a ball carrier could swing an elbow and hang onto the ball.
Well, I'm thinking more of a guy who's coming in to shoot, and a defensive player comes to cover him, and he's already in this position shooting, and then just whacks him in the head.
That is a tough call, right? Yeah. Is that part of the natural act of shooting?
Yeah.
It might be. That's a judgment you're going to have to make. Yeah. We as officials have to make.
The defender might be initiating the contact.
And he might be. Right? If the defender runs into the elbow, you can't call elbowing. You can't call, right? You can't call that on the. I mean, look, it's a dangerous sport. That's why I don't play anymore, as I tell the players all the time. Great. There can be ugly contact that's not necessarily illegal. In this type of thing, it's almost more of a random act. I'm up to shoot, and in the process of it, he runs into my elbow, or even we come together and elbow makes violent contact. It may be a foul, it may not. It's not a ward. If you think it was intentional, you should call that, and you should call that unnecessary roughness. Okay. If you don't think it was intentional, you think maybe the ball carrier didn't initiate the contact. Even if the defender comes in, a smaller defender runs into a big guy who's got his elbow up, but you think it was in the natural act of shooting, and let me tell you, some of these guys make it look good. You're pretty much covered by, that was in the natural act of, that was a natural action of shooting, and yes, the guy put himself on the ground by running into an elbow, but I think you're more covered by not calling that. Certainly, you're more covered by not calling that than by calling it a ward. Right? If you call it unnecessary roughness, you might have some backup. You will have some backup. If it looks like in the film, when the film goes to Tom Neubauer,
especially if he scores.
Yeah, you're better. You'll have more backup calling the unnecessary roughness than you would calling the technical foul. And that was the point of this memo. We think there were probably, especially the bulldog type thing, where a player got run over or even speared, and people were calling that ward. And that wasn't the intent of the ward foul. We went over that pretty thoroughly. Any questions about Ward? Because I think I'm done with that. I think we killed it. Yeah, not good in a good way. Okay. Let's take a look while we're here. Let's take a look at some video if I can get this to come up on the right screen. That worked amazingly enough. Okay. Was that a Ward? You can watch as many times as you want.
No.
I didn't see it.
We're going to watch it in slow motion too. And then, okay?
Defender initiated contact.
No.
Now,
Nothing.
that doesn't, I don't know what they were looking at from looking at it this way. Now, when you look at it in slow motion, I'll tell you, it looks a little bit more like a Ward.
Yeah, but the defender put his stick into mud.
Let's see if I can.
Well, he also didn't go to goal. He went right to the goal.
Be quiet.
What's that? Say that
And
again?
also didn't go to goal. He passed it away to his teammates. So where's he didn't use.
No, he didn't, but that's because the whistle comes here. Look at the arm come up there. It does kind of come up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right?
Okay.
What are you looking for in is a Ward call? It's rarely a safety call, right? And if it is a safety call, we know what we're going to call it now, right? It's going to be a personal foul. In this case, we're looking for the advantage disadvantage.
You're saying he did willfully call.
In this particular play, and I apologize if somebody in here called that video. I don't think so. I don't think this took place around here. But this was called a Ward. Now, even in slow motion, what's that? It looks like, yeah. Watch the arm come up right here.
Yeah, man, I'm going to say that, but it's
But, exactly. What advantage is gained to the player doing the lift, and what disadvantage? Does the defender knock off? Is there space gained? Does he get open to make a shot or pass? No, not really. We can look at it. We can look at it in at full speed again, and you can watch. There's nothing created by that at all. Okay. I wish I had more warding film. Some of the big ones are easy. I got tons of video of big wards with a stick pushed out of the way or a player pushed aside. That's not what we're talking about here in advantage disadvantage. And by definition, especially based on the memo that just came out, a ward is an advantage disadvantage call. There's really no advantage or disadvantage created here, and this probably should not have been a call. Everybody comfortable with that? I think y'all are. Okay.
I mean, if he's coming around the net and about to score and does something like that, then that's a different story.
And there's plenty of video on that, and I think we all understand that that's a Ward. He used his free hand or his free arm to push a stick away and create space, and because of that, he was able to get past his man and either take a shot or make a clear pass, or cause another player to slide. At any rate, he created a clear advantage against what it says in the rule book. That's a foul. That's a Ward. Okay, I think it sounds like from what I'm listening to, especially from JP and Greg, you guys are all calling that anyway. That's good. I probably didn't even spend that much time on it, but just something for you to pass on. Unfortunately, not every association in the country has the same grasp of this, and hopefully we're trying to fix that. Okay, enough of warding. Let's go to push. Nice little short section of the book, page 75. Push is 7.9. It's a paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4 short sentences. 3 short ones and a long one. The player shall not thrust or shove an opponent from the rear. That's pretty clear, right? That could even be a safety foul. A push is exerting pressure after contact is made and is not a violent blow, because a violent blow would be what?
Illegal body.
Could be a legal body check, or if it's right, a violent push could also be unnecessary roughness, right? But it's not a push. A violent blow is not a push. It's not a technical foul. It's not an advantage-disadvantage foul. It's a safety issue. Good, and it's a personal foul. Pushing is permitted from the front or side, as we showed up here. From the front or side when an opponent has possession of the ball or is within 5 yards of the loose ball. In this case, pushing shall be done, not even may be done, shall be done with either closed hand, shoulder, or forearm, and both hands shall be on the cross. Okay, that's pretty clear. Unlike wording, I think where we have a problem with advantage, disadvantage is calling the push when no advantage or disadvantage was created, and not calling the push, even a dinky little push that does create a true advantage, an unfair advantage or disadvantage. Okay? Exactly. Exactly. And where's the other dinky little push? We'll talk about that. How about when a guy's trying to scoop?
Loose ball.
Bingo, loose ball push, right? It doesn't take much pressure on the rear to cause a guy to miss a scoop. He's about to scoop, a little pressure is going to cause him to overshoot the ball. And it looks, and when we call that, it just doesn't. Are you kidding? This is high schools and varsity lacrosse.
Well, I also might think the guy has to go down.
And he doesn't, right? Doesn't say anything about that in the rule. It's contact, it's a push. It's a push from the rear that puts a player at an unfair disadvantage because it causes him to miss a scoop in that case. Let's watch some of this, okay? I've got an interesting clip here in which I think there's a little push that causes a player to miss a scoop that's not called. And then immediately afterwards, the player picks up the ball. There's a slightly bigger push, and the player takes a dive like he's in the Olympics, and that one's called. So let me get these two out of the way. And we have that in full speed and slow motion. Also, can you guys see this? Is that working out okay? Okay, face off. Here's the little push right there. And miss a scoop. Now he does come up with the ball and takes a dive. Let's watch it at full speed one more time. Little push there, misses a scoop. Right? And there he kind of falls to his knee with just a little pressure on his back. Let's watch the same thing. I don't think it's his own guy, and I'll tell you what, that is not always easy to see. It's one thing when they're wearing very clear white and black jerseys, it makes it a lot easier. But
Couldn't you argue they were engaged from the face-off?
it's still, if it was violent contact, it would be more than a push.
Yeah.
If they were engaged from the face-off and there's still an extension or push or pressure from the rear that causes him to be put in an advantage, then it still should be a push. So let's this is let's see. Okay, that is it. Actually, I think that was the player who you could not see. Okay? I think it's the guy whose head is towards us. That wasn't the one that was called.
Right.
All right?
18 looks like he's pulling.
And that's he's pulling the stick afterwards. When the ball's loose, is he allowed to go and pull the stick? He is. I think that the player who applied the check is this one here. So we don't even see in the beginning of the film. Let's watch it again. Now he's out of sight, but I think he's the one who did the pushing that caused him to miss that. That one's not called. There's the ball coming up again, and now you don't see it in the slow motion film. I can show you in the other one. There's the little one. And there the guy's kind of just taking a dive. Was the little one more from the side? I don't know. That's a tougher one. We have another volunteer. I don't want to keep it. All right, then pick on the thing.
I have a question.
I don't know if you guys can see the ball, but as he's going for the scoop, it doesn't take much for me to push him to make him miss that scoop. And if I do that, and he misses the scoop, we got to call that. If I do that and he makes a scoop, what do you got? Right, right. It's a dinky little push.
Right, but it's coming in from the side, and he hits him from the side, and here you can't really tell whether he hits
It's
him
hard.
from the
It's
side
hard.
or
So
from the back.
I have. Nobody seems to be posting video of a dinky little push. I don't know why. I know why. But that may be. I don't know that I came up with the best example of it. And I think we're better off showing it here. But you know what we're talking about. He's about to scoop, and I put enough pressure on his back at the right time. At the right time to make it miss that strike.
So in reality, when you're in the action, you have advantage, disadvantage. When you see one of these little pushes, all of a sudden I'm thinking, was he disadvantaged? Because we were taught this by Bob Schweitzer for years. And if you think, okay, so let's see if he gets the ball, and then all of a sudden he doesn't get it, but now 2 seconds have passed, you're thinking, how am I going to call that push? Because it was 2 seconds have already elapsed. So that's the issue. You have to like make that push call immediately.
You don't have to make the push call immediately.
Well, what you do,
You put the hand up.
Yeah, right.
If you put the hand down, if he picks up the ball and you put the hand down, you didn't make the call late.
Right.
There are plenty of ignorant people on the sidelines who will say, you made that late enough. No, when my hand went up, that's when the call was actually made. Put the hand up. You're pretty much safe. If you put the hand up, you've covered yourself. If the ball's picked up and the player comes out of the scrum cleanly, you put the hand down, and that's the end of it.
Okay, 2 questions, kind of related. Player has possession of the ball, somewhere in the attack zone. It's pushed from behind, starts going down, but he doesn't fall down, you know?
Okay.
And retains possession. Just play on. But the other circumstances, same thing, he's going to the
Well, hang on. He has the ball, so there's no play on with possession, right?
Right.
So there you got to make the decision. That's when your flag comes out a little late. And I agree that when it's a push with possession, and I make the scoop and I'm going away from the ball, away from the goal, I'm going to empty space, and now I get the push, and I maybe stumble a little bit, but I come up clean. That's where I think it's okay to hesitate with your flag. If I go down or I lose the ball, then your flag comes out.
What about the other circumstances? Going to the cage, he gets pushed, and he loses now a scoring opportunity because he can't.
That's not it. That's clearly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's clearly a disadvantage situation. You've been put into. If I'm going to score and I get that same little push, I'm going towards the goal.
Doesn't lose possession.
And I don't lose possession. We're not. The advantage doesn't come here from losing possession. The advantage comes from losing my solid footing to take the shot. That's enough. That put me and the push came from behind, like the book says. That's enough to get my flag out. That created even a dinky one. It caused me to miss the opportunity to shoot. We have to call that. We have to call that. The other dinky little push that I know we don't call enough, because I'm guilty of this as much as anyone, is somebody mentioned it here early, a boundary line where either the ball carrier picks up the ball and comes to a stop just in time, and just an ounce of pressure on my back causes me to go step on the line. What's the foul? What's the call? What should
It's a push.
It's a flag down push. It's a 30-second foul, right? It's a dinky push. And what do we do? You've probably seen it. What happens more often than not? It's such a dinky little push, you don't want to throw a flag on. You call it out of bounds, right? So instead of me being up a man, I lost the ball. That's a huge, both advantage and disadvantage. It's huge. It's a dinky little foul, but it definitely created advantage, disadvantage, right? These are not safety fouls. These are fouls that, if the push came from the side, legally, with 2 hands on the stick, as we demonstrated before, or from the front, from the side, and caused me to hit the line, that's fine. That's a legal push out of bounds, right? No foul. But if the push came from the back and caused me to step on the line, that's got to be a flag down. Frank?
Dave, one that I've seen really frequently is a ball that's at the offensive end, it's a pass that's overthrown, it's rolling toward the midfield, you get an offensive player and a defensive player, both of them standing there. One guy reaches to either flick the ball back or to catch the ball. The other guy just takes his knee and puts it in his butt and pushes him over. Very subtle because everybody can see his hands. He didn't touch him on the back. He did too. He gave him one up the rear.
Yeah. And I was going to talk a little more about that type of foul. I was going to repeat your question. I was going to repeat your comment and question. I don't think I will.
I'm not learning that.
Pressure on the back that causes me to go offsides clearly has to be called. It's almost always a loose ball foul. You know, it may be the same thing as the boundary line that pushes me out of bounds, but most of the time it's the ball's rolling up and there's a little bit of almost invisible pressure that causes me to take that step and go offside. We got to call that. We have to call that right away. Yeah. While we're on that,
The other line that we have to consider is the crease.
yeah, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Advantage, disadvantage around lines. Okay, offsides and the crease, the two main areas with this. It may be offside, and now there's the third, but it's still the midfield line. Midfield line and the crease are the two lines that most come up in this. Midfield line comes up in offsides and also over and back. A little bit of a push that causes a player to go back in the wrong half of the field. If it's done from the back, should be a foul. If it's done from the side, that's a good play. That's a clean play. That's a legal push, a legal check that caused me to go over and back and caused me to lose the ball. That should be called. That should be called over and back, not a call as a foul. But if the pressure occurs on the back, that should be a flag down. The crease, the push can also happen around the crease. Generally around the crease, the pushes are big. What really becomes a big question is more a line violation itself. It's not caused by a push. That may not have a lot of impact on the play. May not have any impact on the play. A player steps on the crease and the ball's rolling to the goalie. The offensive player steps on the crease. The ball rolls, the goalie picks it up. You probably have a play on, right? Well, there we have a play on. What can become an issue there is we have a play on, now the goalie has possession, the guy's still in the crease. Now you may have something else. And that's okay. That's everybody accepts that. The coaches accept that. They know what it's supposed to be. We don't need to talk about that because that's another issue. It doesn't involve advantage, disadvantage. It just involves oddities of the play on rule. But how about the player that kind of, the ball's on the other side of the crease and he steps on the crease and doesn't really gain any advantage by stepping on the crease. Crease violation is not always an advantage. If the ball's over there and I'm running around the crease and I'm not trying to run away from my man and I step on the crease line and I don't gain anything on anybody, is that a foul? It's a foul by the book. Yeah. Should it be called? Here's the problem with taking advantage, disadvantage into account on a line violation like this. The three fouls were safety, advantage, disadvantage, and the one that everybody sees with the grandma on the top there. The line violations are usually one that everybody sees. It may not create an advantage, disadvantage, but everybody in the stadium saw it. And I'll tell you how I have, over the years, how I've evolved in this. If I'm right there, if I'm in the box, and it's a substitution violation, which is a line violation, the guy steps on the line, goes a little early, right? He steps on the line, he's the 11th guy, and the coach realizes, whoa, 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 and he steps back. Any advantage created?
No. All right, disadvantage.
Well, yeah. Any disadvantage created? I mean, if somebody notices that and maybe misses an assignment because he sees a guy coming in from the box, that is put a player at a disadvantage. That should be called. But if there's no impact on the players on the field, it's just the guy who steps on and steps off, and he's number 11, the 11th man, not 11 on his jersey, but he's the number 11 player on the field. Does that create an advantage, disadvantage? It really doesn't. I mean, again, there are situations it could, but in the one where it doesn't here, where it had no impact on the field, that's a tougher one to say, didn't create any advantage, coach. Why didn't you call that? You saw that. Why didn't you call that? Coach, it created no advantage. There are times to say that. If you're standing in the box, you're the third, in the three-man game, you're the third guy coming up his trail, and that happens right in front of you, and you don't call it, now you've kind of lost some integrity. And as much as I hate to say that, I have evolved to making that call. If I'm standing right there and there's a line violation that's clear to everyone in the stands, created no advantage, disadvantage, but it's clear to everyone in the stands. If I'm standing right there and everybody watch me standing right there and looking at this, if I don't call it, that guy's got no, I'm done. I think I'm done.
Yeah, and like a similar one that I don't call a lot is like the toe offside one on the last riding attackman, where the ball's already cleared and maybe he doesn't land on that, and everyone knows that I saw it because I'm there, but I don't call it, and then
I didn't call it for the first 34 years of my career. And then I heard things walking out of the stadium, like, you were standing, you know,
stand right there, you saw it.
Yeah, and you know what? Most of the time I ignore that comment.
I just keep walking. Yeah.
But if I'm sorry, you can play with it a little bit. I have tended, if I am standing right there, and it's not the little toe, it's a bigger one.
Or a big swing or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll always go that way.
Then I tend to call it now, and I do it. I almost probably look sheepishly every time I report that foul.
Yeah.
Look sheepish because I don't like making the call, but to me it's an integrity thing. It's the one that everyone saw, which I used to think that third foul was a joke, just because everyone in the play saw it doesn't mean it created any advantage disadvantage. But what I've come to realize in watching games myself and listening to fans, which is really painful, I'm sure you've all done it, watching your buddies on the field and listening to what goes on around you in the stands, oh my God, that's difficult. But in doing that a lot more lately, especially as I've been doing more observing than refereeing, I've come to think that our integrity is at stake if we don't call them. And that takes a little more to absorb that into your own routine. It took me, like I said, 34 years.
Dave, I'm going to assume you don't call the wing line on the face.
Okay.
I'm not saying they go early. I'm saying it's on the line.
Okay.
You try to get it back, but.
Okay, there's another issue there. So let me just back up. Don't let me go away without covering this one. But let's back up to the midline, the offside. The last riding attackman who steps on the line, if he's taking a check and he steps on the line, that's an advantage. That extra inch might have been enough to make him make that check.
Yeah, he's still in play.
I think we all agree that we would call that one.
What if he doesn't connect, though? What if he's running the line, he's running downfield, goes for the swing, and the middies, leaps and bounds ahead of him.
And that's the one you're talking about before.
Yeah.
If I'm standing right on the line and I see it and I know everyone else saw it, I have evolved to call that, whereas not that many years ago I would not, and now I do. And I think it's because in spending more time in the stands and listening to what people say, and not all of them are completely ignorant. Some of them say, man, everybody saw that and he's standing right there. That doesn't look good on him, and it doesn't. So I have evolved to call that. The wing line violation, if a guy is early, that's an advantage, right? He's got a half a step. That's an advantage. And that we should be calling. If a guy is standing on the line,
Lined up on the line.
He's lined up on the line, and he's got a toe on the line. There's a problem with not calling it. You're probably somewhere where you're looking right down the line. There's someone else who sees that. Probably one other person. Who is that?
These are just.
It is. We'll talk about that.
If you don't call it, see those who can take advantage of little things.
Exactly.
Yeah,
if you don't call it, number one.
Watch the line.
And we'll talk about what to say. If I don't call it, this guy's not happy with me. And he also knows that he may be able to get away with something.
He'll go for it next
time. Okay? What's the preventive technique? And I like how you said it. Somebody said it out here.
Watch the line.
Get yourself off the line, like you said, Nick.
So rather than get yourself off the line, or number 11, get yourself off the line.
Right.
Gentlemen, check your line. It's said to both players. It's more preventive. There's a very fine line between coaching on the field as an official and preventive officiating. And we try and lean towards preventive officiating. And I think by saying, gentlemen, check your line, it's much cleaner than saying, number 11, back up. Okay? That's coaching. Gentlemen, check your line. I'm saying it to both players. Hopefully he looks down. It does two things for me. It's even. I'm not calling a player out. I'm trying to be preventive. And then if he doesn't back up and the whistle blows, now when I take him, he knows I want him and his opponent knows I want him, and I don't have any. That solves my integrity issue. Is that an advantage? Probably not. but it falls clearly under that number 3 file, and that number 3, that file that everyone saw. And I've evolved, my evolution has been, if I'm going to call that, and I have done the preventive thing by saying, gentlemen, check your line, I am a lot more comfortable making that call. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. You had talked about line violations. Were there other questions on that before I move on?
Yeah, I just did, the crease is another one, which you covered. I mean, a guy steps on the crease, a guy steps on the crease. And I probably from some stuff, when you observed me in my Laredo, if I'm way back and I catch it out of the corner of my eye, I'm probably going to pass. But if I'm right there, you got to.
And listen to what Greg's saying was, if I'm way back and I catch it out of the corner of my eye, nobody in the stands is saying, man, he's right there and he didn't call that.
And if the coach questions me on my way out, I can say, Coach, I thought maybe I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I'm going to look closer the next time.
Now, there are cases, that's good. There are cases where this little push that we're talking about, where the push where the guy is going away from the play, away from the goal, going to open space, doesn't lose the ball, doesn't fall down, and you don't call that, you're going to hear something most likely. And in a lot of cases, most of the coaches don't want that called when it's done against them, right? So they're not going to argue when they don't want to call it against their guy because they know it didn't create an advantage. So they're not going to argue when it's done to their guy. But there are plenty of coaches who will say, that's a push, that was a push. And as you go by, and don't be careful, you don't want to necessarily answer a coach right there, but as you go by, coach, that created no advantage whatsoever. And they may take that, they may not. But you've explained yourself. You've hopefully done it in a somewhat personal and private way that no one else knows you talked to them. And there are plenty of coaches, like I said, there are college coaches who want you to call everything as it's written in the book, and they're not going to take that for an answer. Once you realize that, don't say it to them again. But don't change the way you call it. Call it once you've called it enough that you complained about it, you called it early enough in the game, keep calling it that way. Call it consistently all day. And hopefully your partners are doing it the same way. And talk to them if you think you're on a slightly different page.
And I just say one thing regarding the crease, and I also like to know, or not like to know, I keep an eye on what the score is, like it's later in the game and someone's touching the crease and they're getting crushed, that type of thing. It's just like,
yes.
I would talk to him, hey, you stuck the line.
And
this way he knows that we're looking, and then he'll be better off the next game keeping an eye.
You gain so much from building a rapport with the players and talking to them. First of all, not talking down to them and not talking at them, but legitimately talking to them and listening to them. When we do our presentation to face-off players, that's a great point. When we do our presentation to face-off players before the game, one of the things we say to them, guys, if you're having an issue with what your opponent's doing or the way we're doing something, please let us know. Say something to us. And then we listen to them. Because when kids talk to you, they talk to you. When coaches talk to you, it's usually a lot more than talk. Right? Kids talk, coaches yell. You heard Brian Abbott say that if you're on that webinar. The more you talk to the kids and the more you talk to the assistant coach who's handling the face-off, it's okay to talk to him. It's okay for him to ask a question if it's asked in a gentlemanly fashion. We talk about that a lot. Some officials don't want to hear anything from an assistant coach, but if there's an assistant coach who's talking to the face-off kids and he has you call a violation, how do we call a violation? Guy goes early, we call illegal procedure, blue ball. What does the coach know? It's illegal. I know this is off topic, but illegal procedure is way too many syllables to get out of your mouth without conveying any information at all. So you can use this signal and say, blue's early, white ball. Some groups don't like to use two colors. I'm okay with it if you end with white ball. It's pretty clear what you have. You don't want to say blue's early, white, because what? But if you slow it down a little bit and you explain it clearly.
Or if you say like blue push white, you don't know who,
Blue push white, right.
Yeah.
Blue pushes, 13 blue pushes, white ball. It's really clear. And it's only one extra word. But it's all blue, it's white. We want to avoid that. There you can come up with one color. Nobody needs an explanation. But the point of this is if you have an assistant coach who's responsible for face-offs or substitutions and you call a violation, and he asks in a gentlemanly fashion what you called, he's asking so he can talk his kids out of, teach his kids not to follow them. Take advantage of that. Answer them if you can. We're not giving an assistant coach a license to complain. That's not what it's about. But if it's a coach who's responsible for that, function of the game, and he asked a legitimate question in a gentlemanly fashion. Why not answer it? That only helps you. It takes pressure off the head coach, and it really takes pressure off you by having that communication. All right, moving on to the last thing. How are we doing time-wise?
You got about 10 more minutes?
Okay, that's all I need. Okay, this is an interesting one. I like this one. I don't know why I like it. Let's get rid of this. This came. I got this emailed last night. I think this was a game yesterday. All right, there's a couple things happening here. Watch the center of your screen. All right, flag. Now let's watch it again. We'll watch it a couple times. What's the first thing? What's the call? What's the initial call? Do you know? All right. I think I gave you a bad location. Let's try this again. We're actually watching up here. Right there. What's the call? Moving pick is the call.
Oh, didn't he move from the contact?
Yeah. Illegal screen. Yeah. Well, that's the question. And that's when they're talking to Buzzy about this. We're trying to figure out, Coach sent this, obviously. We're trying to figure out what was the pick? When you
I had him moving off the contact line.
Okay.
Yeah, I had him stationary.
Okay. So we came down to a couple things. First of all, was he stationary when the contact occurred? And the moving pick is a rapidly evolving section of the game. Anybody know why? I think
We're using more picks.
Yeah. What is leading to this? What's the change occurring even at the youth level and high school level that's leading to more picks happening in the game?
Success in basketball.
Canadians play where?
Wow.
Indoors. All the kids are playing indoors in the winter. They're playing in smaller spaces, and picks have a much bigger impact on the game, and they're carrying this to the field. All right, and the Canadians, first of all, indoor rules are very different about moving picks. They allow stuff that we would never even consider. What they allow as a clean pick is what I would call a 6-minute cross check. Okay, so we're seeing more picks set, and we're seeing picks set in a very different fashion. This one wasn't so much different, except that we think the player got set. We're going to watch it frame by frame. We think the player got set.
His feet were very wide.
Initially, that's exactly right, JP. Initially, it looks like his feet are, how wide are they allowed to be? Shoulder width. And when he first sets, it looks like his feet are wide. And then as we go to the next frame, somebody cuts in front of it. But when the contact occurs, he has moved that foot in, I think. Let's look at it.
I'm not. No, the flag's not that.
The flag's a different issue, and we'll talk about that too. Okay, so actually, I want to move this out of the way here. Okay, so we're watching. You know where we're watching? We're watching right here. Okay, so here comes the player with the black leggings on to set the pick. And look at his position now. Right now, his feet are, right now they're wide, right? Right now they're absolutely wide. And this would be, we wouldn't call it a moving pick, but Greg, you called it illegal screen, exactly. I think that was you that Greg said. It might have been someone else. Mark, sorry. Okay. Right now, if the contact occurs, that's an illegal screen because it's an illegal screening position, right? His feet are wider than his shoulders. But here, now here we miss, we can't see his left foot here, but at this point, as we see now his feet, look at his feet now. Now they're shoulder width apart. Is there movement? He's braced. He's braced like all hell. His knees are bent and he's braced. But does he move into the player? If anything, he cringes. Right? He's sat and braced before the contact, and he's moved that foot in enough that he's in a legal screening position. Okay. No, the stick's not. Right? He can't pick like this. We know that, right? You see that? Right, he can't, but his stick's up here. He originally set it like this, and then he looks like he moved that foot in somewhere before the contact occurred. And he's getting ready to, remember, a cringe or a reaction to the contact is not a moving pick anywhere. We're still not allowing the cross-check pick that indoors, but a cringe or a reaction from the contact does not make a moving pick. So we think this, any disagreement?
David, who made the call?
I don't think it was trail. I think it was single side, and then now there's something else that happens here.
No, I think it might be the goal.
Yeah, no,
The other two aren't even moving.
The goal official calls the delay. I don't know if we got a few minutes. We can.
Yeah, go ahead, we get that.
I'm not sure where the moving pick call comes from. There's no sound here, so I'm not sure. So 37 clearly doesn't blow his whistle, right?
Right.
That's not one of us, is it?
Nah.
These are New York officials. I think this was at Vassar.
Not gonna lie, I was trying to figure it out.
So the whistle comes, you know what, you're right. Look where it comes from.
The other two officials aren't even moving.
It comes from the lead official.
Is he the right guy to make that call?
He's really the only one that has the 90-degree view.
But the other guy's in front, if he saw
Yeah.
35
But
first,
you
he
can't
doesn't
make
see.
that's exactly right. You can't make the foot wide call from 90 degrees. You can't see the width of the feet at all. You may be able to see movement.
Maybe you move this stick into the guy.
But the contact appears to be square on to the body,
It is, no question.
right? Look, we have the opportunity here to look at this frame by frame. The officials on the field do not. So this isn't criticism of an official. We're trying to develop what's a foul and what's not a foul here. And a moving pick is absolutely, it could be a safety issue, but in this type of instance, it's an advantage, disadvantage. Right? It can be a pick can be very effective if it's applied illegally. It can be very effective if it's applied legally. But when it's the illegal action that causes that pick to be very effective, that's where we need to call it. If the feet are wide, let's look at just talk quickly about a couple different things. If I'm moving and I maybe attempt to make contact, but I miss, player slides right through, was there any advantage? No. Probably not a call. If the feet are wide, where my stick's out like this, and the defender has to go around that stick.
Still not a call,
Okay.
though.
Here's the problem with, what's it say in the book about, has to be contact to call a moving pick. Does there have to be contact to call an illegal screening position? I don't think so. Okay, you can't call it moving pick.
We don't call them, we call them
Illegal screen.
That's the thing is,
But if I set up in such a way that I cause a player to go around me and that creates an advantage, even if there's no contact, I think that creates an advantage.
no, I agree with you, but by the letter.
Can you define it by the letter of the book?
We don't call it that.
I don't know.
Coach, tell him to run.
You're right, absolutely. But that doesn't, at every level, that kind of coaching doesn't happen. We talk about other kinds of coaching that may start happening after some things that are just starting to happen on the field based on rule changes. This is not an easy one. In my opinion, I can create a huge advantage by setting a pick in an illegal position if I think that guy's going to go around me and I get away with it. And I may have bought one. And I can't tell you to call it or not call it. I think that's a tough one. It's really difficult to call by the book. It really is difficult. Because the book says that there's no, like it may say next year that if the ball carrier has two hands on the stick, you can't call moving, you can't call ward. Well, if there's no contact, it does say in a situation, if there's no contact, there's no moving pick. Right? What's it say?
Contact is made between offensive and defensive players.
Right.
Even if the
We don't call it, even if he's in an illegal position, we don't call it unless there's contact.
And you know what?
That's not current.
I can't
The rule
argue.
probably needs to be straightened
I
out.
can't argue against that.
Yeah, and that's,
Greg, would you do me a favor? Would you send me an email sometime during the season? I'm going to put it in my bin of potential rule proposals.
that's the way we've talked about it over the years. That's the way we.
And I can't argue against that because that's what the book says.
Yeah.
I would maybe like to see us add
Set up
a,
positions.
So
We've
maybe
seen
I,
guys lean and move.
and they miss, right? And
But
they
it
miss.
makes it really difficult now too, when you're bringing long poles down and they're staying down much longer.
Right.
They set like this, is it right? But
So-
again, we're taught if there's no contact. And that, and then if we call it, the other guy is screaming,
There's
he
no
never
contact.
touched it.
You know what? And they're probably right. So if you send that to me, maybe we'll try and write up something that says a moving pick cannot be called if there's no, we'll keep it like that. But illegal screening position may be called whether contact occurs or not. May be called if an advantage is created. Nowhere in the rule book does it say if an advantage is created.
Well, if the defensive player is smart, he would run it.
Yeah, he would, and that's what coaches will do, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's look at the other half of this
But
real
I think
quick.
they're risking too, Mike, that we're gonna call that or not.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
they are, and the guy who's setting up the illegal screen is taking a chance.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the player's going to run into it, but it's not. If the defender runs into the pick and it's not called, he's at a huge disadvantage.
Right.
But that's easier for us to call. But the defender has trouble if he knows the pick's there. His best move to play the defense is to avoid the pick.
You're right.
And by setting up that illegal screening position, you're making him avoid it by an extra 3 feet or something like that by making that curve.
He's going to try to avoid.
That's a big advantage. So we'll talk. I'm not going to talk about that anymore because I can't argue that you should be calling it if contact didn't occur, because that's not what the book says. Okay, the next call here. Whoop, I'm trying to just move there we go. So wide feet. Now there's a shift. Narrow, legal width feet, cringing position, but no motion into the player. So anyway, the moving pick's called here. Watch what the ball carrier does. All right, what's he doing? He just, I can't really tell what happened to the ball there. There it is. There it is. But where's it roll to?
He rolls turn around.
Yeah, and turnover picked up right there by a defender. Did it roll more than what? 3 yards?
Right.
And did it cause any delay of game? Did it cause the defender? No. So why is the flag coming out there? I'm not really sure. Okay. A delay action can be a huge advantage. Put myself at advantage, but you at a disadvantage. If I toss that ball, that gives me a chance. Yep, either sub my player or to get in a better defensive position. That's a huge advantage, and I rolled the ball away to create that, and that should be called. But if the ball rolls a couple yards and it's immediately picked up, and that was a quick restart. You don't get quicker restarts than that. There's probably no advantage there at all. I'm not sure why that. And this is an NCAA game. I'm not sure why that flag came. Just something to keep in mind.
Actually, Dave, just to add that, I one time had the guy in the box, similar thing. It was a defender, so he was clearing. He rolls the ball up to the top of the box. The new offensive player picks it up, 2 steps, shoots, scores, and then looks at me and says, "Wasn't that a delay?" And I'm like, "Well, which do you want? Do you want the delay, or did you want the ball in 2 steps and a shot?" I mean, that was classic advantage disadvantage.
Right.
Yeah, and he flung it like 6-7 yards. He just happened to play it right to the kid.
Yeah. There's the thing. He actually probably put himself at a disadvantage by rolling the ball.
He disadvantaged himself tremendously.
Calling it,
if I call it, now I got to stop playing.
Now you're disadvantaged.
I got to adjudicate the foul.
Yeah, and you may even have to, as you're blowing the whistle, you may have to now turn around and take the ball out of the goal, which you never want to.
Right. Well, I had my hand on my flag. The kid picked it up, took 2 steps. There was nothing.
Yeah, and that's perfect.
Nothing I could, now if he had missed the ball, then you have something.
Right. But you hesitated just enough to look at the result of the play, and did an advantage-disadvantage actually occur? And that's great officiating.
Lucky there.
Very lucky.
Yeah,
I wanted to throw my flag back. I got it. He delayed. Look at it.
There's a couple instances of delay. This is where I'm going to close. A couple instances of delay that advantage-disadvantage is key. The ward here, the ward or the moving pick, where I put the ball down maybe, but then I stand right there. How do we handle that? What's the mechanic? I stand right there, and the defender picks it up, and he's ready to go, and I'm standing right there. Federation rules. NCAA rules, we can blow the whistle, right? We don't want to get into that in Federation yet. We don't think the NCAA officials are handling it well or handle it well, and it creates more issues than it solves. So we need 5 yards for the restart. By standing there, what's the mechanic? I ward it off. I put the ball down like I'm supposed to, but I'm going to stand there as the defender comes up and picks it up, and I'm just going to stand here.
Tell him to move and start.
5 yards.
Okay. Do I get a 5-second count? Can I move away when you get to 4? Is that legal? Okay. What's the rule book say about 5-second restarts?
The goalie gets it.
The
Goalie gets it. We'll talk about that. That's my next talk for the 5 seconds. Up to 5 seconds. Who gets up to 5 seconds?
Ball holder.
The team entitled to the ball gets up to 5 seconds to be ready to restart. Do I get up to 5 seconds to get out of the way?
No.
Absolutely not. Do I create a huge advantage by standing here for 4 seconds and holding up for a restart for 4 seconds? Absolutely. Absolutely. That, I may be able to get a player a long stick on the field in that 4 seconds. That's a huge advantage. What do you say? Do you start a count? I don't. I do not start a count there. If it's number 42, if I'm the official doing a restart, and 42 puts the ball down and stands right there, number 42, 5 yards or 30 seconds, and my hand goes to my flag. And if you don't move right away, I'm throwing. There's no 5 count here. That's a huge, he's putting this team at a huge disadvantage, and that has to be called. And the book doesn't call for 5 seconds for him. He doesn't get 5 seconds to move out of the way. The team that's getting the ball gets 5 seconds to get a guy up there to play. Right, it's the same as if the ball goes out of bounds on the end line. If there's a ball there, goalie wins the race to the end line, and there's a ball there, but he doesn't want to restart it, so he goes back into the crease, and a midfielder comes from east and fifth to go take the ball. That's where you want to start your 5 count. He has 5 seconds to get there. Okay, I think we're all good with that. Goalie, we talked. This is my last point. Goalies get what? What's the rule book say about what's a goalie get on any restart? Anyone know how it's worded? Bingo. Who said that? Maximum of 5 seconds. A maximum of 5 seconds to get in position on any restart. So, if I'm the goalie and there's a shot that misses the goal and there's an attacker standing right there, how many goalies do you see are going to chase it just to give the defense a rest? Do I get 5 seconds on that? I hope not. I don't give it to him. Boy, do I get some arguments from coaches. He gets 5 seconds. No, he doesn't, coach. He gets a maximum of 5 seconds. So, no, is that easy to say to a coach? No, but I can show my picture in the rule book. You don't have that advantage yet. But, yeah, that was a joke.
I'm not going to put this with him on the crease.
I was a goalie. And since I'm not on, since nobody here is going to mention this anywhere else, I probably advantage goalies more than any other official. And there are a lot of officials who are goalies, so we all tend, you know, we have a special place in our heart for goalies. They're strange creatures, right? They're fragile creatures. They have emotional issues. That's why they're standing there. Okay. All right. I admit it took me a long time to admit that. I have a special place for goalies, but I don't give a goalie 5 seconds if he doesn't have a legitimate chase. Not at all. Now I'll tell him the first time. Goalie, you don't get 5 seconds. You get a maximum of 5 seconds. And if you don't have a legitimate chase, I'm going when the
I mean, I don't think a lot of our goalies are going next level like that to give their defensive rest by purposely running out end line balls for fair reason.
Okay.
That's second level.
All right. It is, and it's happening in places. Something to think about. And the one thing that I just saw recently, this is a new thing. One of the things I did not like changing to the NCAA rule that we're allowing the release of the shot, okay? Well, I didn't like it as an official, and I got completely outvoted. Because to me, I think bringing in this rule means on every ending period, no matter where the ball is, they're throwing it at the goal, and damn if we're not going to be the ones having to chase it. Well, is that a stupid reason to oppose a rule? Absolutely. That's why I opposed it. And again, I lost all my embarrassment sit-ups. It kind of wore out when I hit 50. So I don't have an issue making that argument. And they thought it was funny, but I lost anyway. Here's what's happened. Here's what I saw happen last week. This does not happen in college because the rule doesn't exist. It's a combination of this rule and a rule that was passed last year. It was rammed down the committee's throats, by the way, by the Science and Safety Committee. The rule says that an unprotected, non-goalie defender is not allowed to step in the crease to block the shot. Yes. Here's what we saw. This film came from New York in a fall game where they were using the new rules. It's 11-10 white, and the white goalie makes a save late in the game, and he's out of the crease, and he runs all the way up the field. And as the clock ticks down, he loses the ball up near the other goal. And he starts running back, and the defender picks up the ball, and just before the clock hits 0, he releases a shot. Right? They're down by a goal. Ball's in the air, horn goes off, and now a defender steps in and makes the save. What do you got?
Was it a loose ball?
It was a loose ball.
Well,
It's after the horn, and the game's over.
It's just a turnover. You just give
The
it.
game's over.
Oh.
It's 11-10 white, and blue took the shot. Last second shot, the horn, the game expires while the ball's in the air, and now the defender steps in and makes the save that would have tied it up.
Yeah, play on.
It's a play on.
It's over.
It's over. The game's over.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Nothing. You're gonna do bupkis. You're gonna do exactly what you're gonna do when a player, a ball carrier with two hands on the stick makes a little move like this. You're gonna do nothing. We gotta talk about that. I don't know what the answer is to that one, but that's a tough one to let go, but oof.
Well, I guess the bigger, if he scores, then you get overtime.
If he scores, you're going to overtime. If he scores, then the defender stepped in. You're going to overtime with either the ball to start the period if it was the first advantage, or there, not only that, if it's a second.
Loose ball. We're being told it's a loose ball.
Yeah, hold on. That's a good point. Now, this is coming out with a memo that we finished up today. At the end of the second period, that long shot goes off, and there's some kind of technical foul while the ball's in the air. It might be a push, or it might be that defender stepping in. You don't have a face-off. That's right. You award the ball to start the next period. So.
Now you want to, okay, so again, they're releasing the ball from the other line, and the goal is not in the crease. So the defender's not allowed to step in that crease.
That's correct.
Wow. To play goal.
But the ball's already gone out of its stick, so you can't blow it dead.
Well, right, you can't blow it dead and give him. You can't make a man up. You can't blow it dead. The shot's already in the air when the game expires, and now the defender steps in the crease and makes the save.
The game's expired. If it happens, it happens.
I'm running my car.
There aren't any coaches in here, right?
Yeah.
What I'm petrified about is
There's a few of them. There's at least two.
coaches are going to be coaching their kids. If we're up by a goal and that guy takes the last second shot and the horn goes off and the game is over, go in there and make the save. What I would hope you would coach him is make the save from the front of the crease. Or reach in with your stick and catch the ball. Don't go in the crease. But if he goes in and makes the save, the game's over. And there's not anything to do about it. Any questions about any of, I was all over the place today. Yeah? But what are you going to call? I don't even know how to fix it. We've had a proposal over the last couple of years that a game can't end on a foul in football.
Sure.
That if you have a foul that goes beyond the period, the end of the period, that you're going to play that additional time. That has not had any, nobody's entertained that yet. It may get a little more entertainment now with this situation, but it may not happen anymore. It already happened in the fall, so I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again. Anyway, any other questions? No? All right, thank you very much.
I want to thank Dave for coming and joining us, and we didn't talk about any financial remuneration. He didn't ask for it.
You could change that, say, the ball has to be released from the offensive end of the period.
Yeah, that's actually, but
That's the way
so
it
here's
works.
the problem. I like that, and I brought that up.
Yeah.
I brought that up when they brought this up. When they
You
proposed
almost
this
say ball has to release inside the box.
Here's one of the things that David talked this morning in the New Jersey Clinic. One of the things that we try to do on the Federation Committee is be as consistent with the NCAA as we can, without, if it's a safety issue and these kids need a little more protection, we don't quibble with the differences there. But that would create now, we were different when we were going by, the ball had to be in the goal at the end of the period. We've gone to basically the NCAA rule on this. What we didn't want to do is create a third situation where now we have another rule difference. What's the purpose of it? I think that's a better rule.
The purpose of that rule was for safety. That they didn't want defenders playing goalie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But a ball that's released from.
The rule that would change here is the releasing of the ball. It would be different from the NCAA.
Exactly.
If we said, as long as the shot was released from the offensive
But
end.
we know the NCAA is not ever going to put the rule in about the defenders.
No, they will not. They will not. And again, that rule was jammed
That
down
was
the
a
throat.
youth rule that came up.
And we didn't have, that came from the Science and Safety Committee.
Exactly.
We didn't even get to vote on it. That was it. But, which is why I went in the book wrong the first time, where it said, if it's a second and subsequent violation for that player, and it was always intended to be the team. We just wrote it wrong. But since we didn't get to vote on it, we didn't get to write it. Anyway.
I have a lot of problems.
That's,
Keep a man down for a minute at the end of the period for a defender stepping in the crease. To stop a ball's been chopped.
yeah, but if the game's over, the game's over.
No, I'm talking like in the third quarter.
Yeah, yeah.
Or halftime.
There will be plenty of discussion about that, I'm sure. Anyway, thanks for thanks for your input and listening. And I enjoyed that.
All right, with that, Dave, want to thank you for coming out. So we have a coin.
Oh, wow, thank you. Thank you very much. I love it.
Shit kicking chicken. Flag throwing chicken.
You're the R. Get it right.
Ass kicking
man.
chicken.
Come on.
And then your choice of a DLOA hat.
Get more math stuff.
Have you ever been in a chicken coop? They're kicking some shit.
Thank you very much. Can I try it on?
You try it on, pick out the one that fits you best.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. There you go. Thanks.
Damn turtle.
I got your
Who's
turtle.
up?
All right.
With the turtle stuff, okay?
Real quick, with Dave still here, we talked about this warning memo. It came out. I put it on our Facebook page. I will send it out to everybody and get it on our website. Coaches have access to this too. This is something that they may ask you in scrimmages. So like we said, you cannot call a ward when a player has two hands on a stick. It's not supporting the rules in any way, no matter really what he does. That can't be a ward, okay? The bull dodge, lowering the shoulder could be, and I think could is a big word here. Okay, it doesn't say should be, it doesn't have to be, it has to be. Consider unnecessary roughness if the official judges the contact was excessive or unnecessary. Okay, a lot of times you're going to see a guy driving up the field or driving towards the goal. He's about to absorb a check, where he comes across a player who's moving in a position to check him, and he's going to either brace himself or dip his shoulder a little bit. Okay, that's probably okay, but it's going to be your judgment if it was excessive or unnecessary. It moves on to the spear. This is nothing new, okay? And just remember, every time two helmets clank together, 10 mommies are going to be yelling, right? They're all going to yell, helmet to helmet. That's not the rule. It's leading with your helmet. When two guys run into each other, okay, their helmets are going to touch. That's going to be your judgment. That's not necessarily a penalty. But if he drops his head and uses that to create space, you now have a 2-minute full-time penalty on the offensive player. Okay? Every time he drops his head, the other coach is going to say he dropped his head. It's your judgment. Okay? And that penalty, it's not just a 2-minute penalty. It's just like an illegal body check to the head or neck. It's 2 or 3 minutes. If you think it's severe, if the kid took a 15-step run and just dropped his head right into the other guy, chuck him. That's not a lacrosse move. It has nothing to do with the lacrosse, game of lacrosse. Okay, you're probably going to save his life, at least for the rest of that game and the next game. Okay, and you're going to prevent, hopefully, it from ever happening again on the field with any of those kids who saw him get tossed. And then I think number 4 kind of moves back to number 2. If the body contact is judged as legal, the offensive player shall not be called for a ward. And that goes to what David talked about. Okay, you either have a ward or you have unnecessary roughness. Okay, there's no in-betweens. Okay, you can't make up an illegal procedure, even though that's your catch-all for most things. There's nothing else you can do. You've either got a ward or you've got unnecessary roughness. And I wanted to look at a couple clips real quick and talk about this, and some of them it's good probably that David is here. So here's one, and this one, this is Coco's Bulldogs. Okay, they're little kids, and I know the first guy's going to say they're little kids. That's a penalty. Absolutely. Yeah. If you're doing a game for Mike, if you're doing a middle school game and a kid does this, you got to call it. We're talking about a high school varsity, a decent high school JV game, but it's a very good example. Okay, so let's take a second to look at this. And they slow it down nice for us too.
It's good.
Okay, 2 hands on the stick. Okay, he really doesn't, he kind of he drives through, but it's his momentum.
Yeah, the other guy's coming out.
And the other guy's moving into a position to check it. Again, you do a little kid game, this is probably something, you know, you've at least, you got to figure something out. And maybe you call the fact that they got different colored shooting shirts underneath or something.
I mean, the other guy's running at him.
He's running, he's moving. Okay.
That's physics.
High school game?
So the way to work the situation is for a stationary defender. He runs over a stationary defender. This defender is not stationary. At a varsity game, this would be a tough one to call. At a youth game, if you watch what happens after that, he goes after another kid. Can you run that one again? Great, sorry.
Yeah, I can go back.
Run the full speed part.
He doesn't quite get the second.
He kind of misses it, but that was, he loved the contact here. He wants to do it. He wants more.
Oh, wow.
He wants more. I think at this level, you probably have to call that.
That second one, you might have to call.
It doesn't show it. It doesn't show again. They cut it off before.
Yeah, I think, you probably, let me see if I can push it forward just
But
so.
he wants more of it. He's going after the next one. So again, at a high school varsity level, you probably don't have the grounds to call this. That may be reworded next year to take out the words violent and excessive. I don't know if we're going to take away the stationary defender word, but the committee will certainly spend some time discussing that.
It was earlier, where he runs through.
Yeah, I thought maybe they showed it again.
Here you go.
Yeah, I think.
No, it's gonna stop. So, okay, so you see that one in most of our high school varsity games, we're gonna call it. Or not call it, we're gonna pass. All right, we gotta hurry up, I'm gonna run out of battery here. Okay, here's another one. Now, this was supposed to start another time, just wait. Maybe nice play by the goalie, David.
Thank you.
Okay, so he's getting checked, he's getting mauled. And he runs through the guy. Now, was this the one we had the question?
Yeah. They didn't really get to see it though.
Yeah.
You're in like power saving modes.
I've got a cord here. That probably was having.
No, I have a cord, it's just not gonna be long enough, I don't think. Problem is the power is all the way back here.
What are we looking for?
He takes his hand off the stick.
Where, midfield? The one you're talking about?
Yeah, middle.
But my question is the contact actually by the defender? And he's just protecting himself.
You're saying this one's called?
This is listed as legal. Where I guess, well, it's just a YouTube clip. I don't know that it really necessarily has any legality. JP and I talked about it, and we kind of agreed. I don't think we could call anything. The kid is running. He's being aggressively defended. Being ridden hard. He does. When you slow it down frame by frame, if he goes by that last guy, he takes his hand off his stick. And that was kind of our question. But again, the contact's being initiated by the other player. And he doesn't ever move his hand. He just kind of braces for a hit. Then he grabs it and keeps on going. To me, it was a very good lacrosse play.
That play's gonna happen 20 times a game.
Yeah. I mean, if you had anything, you probably could get a slash before the contact. Okay. I mean, he gets him right on the hand, and then he comes for his back. Yeah. If you didn't call the first one, you probably want to call the second.
And he takes a step to the right.
So.
Here's the problem. If you don't call the backslash,
You could call the backslash.
then you call the
I'm
ball
gonna call the
down.
backslash before I call
Or
it.
unnecessary roughness. Woo, is that coach going to be?
Okay. Here's one more. This is at a college level. Okay.
You can do that.
Now, NCAA doesn't have a rule against this.
Right.
It's stationary.
So I had this would be a tough one to call because again, the defender's not stationary.
Not only that, the defender initiates contact.
The defender's moving to make the play. And he actually kind of backs over him and protects his stick. So all those, okay, again, you're going to see those. And, you're going to get half of the people are going to be, oh, great hit, and they're going to be jumping up and down. And as you run by the other coach, you're going to get an earful. So you have to, again, like kind of what I've talked about and some of the articles I've put up, understand the language. The defender wasn't stationary. In my judgment, it wasn't excessive. It wasn't violent.
Not excessive or violent.
You know, when you're discussing that with the coach that's not happy, that's the language. When he asked, you didn't have, you know, unnecessary roughness, we just got the memo. Well, coach, the memo to me said it has to have this, this, and this, and I didn't see that. I had that as good. All right, let's look at. The book does, yeah. I don't know if the memo does. But.
In all of these cases, the defender's not stationary. You can hang your hat on that too.
All right, let's talk about this one. One of my favorites. All right. Some of you may recognize this field.
Oh, it's in there. It's in there.
So, what do we got?
Del Castle. This is Del Castle? Our Del Castle?
There was a push, called the push.
Is that Martinez?
This is one of our higher level games here, David.
Was this before?
This
is this on a face-off?
This was, yeah. There was a.
There's a heads-up play by an official. I'm sure it was an official forcing those two kids to go back and box.
That would be Brett Townsend.
Okay.
Okay, this is, I missed, I had the beginning point in a minute. It's going to come here. There's going to be, it's a typical Del Castle Christiana game. There's 10. Okay. Anybody got anything? Okay. What do we have? What did you guys say? Was the defender stationary? He's actually running for his life. Okay. But what was the big part of that? High, he clears through, right? Okay, we had it unnecessary roughness, and about 15, 20 emails later, it was still unnecessary roughness.
That's the coach.
But that's actually from the YouTube that he sent to us to complain, you know, that shouldn't have been called. And just to give you a situation in that game, okay, that's their big linebacker, all-state running back kid, and he just ran that kid over. He had no other, he had 10 other options in my view. He could roll dodge, he could face dodge. That kid was so scared, he could have done this, shot, and probably got a goal. But he elected to just take out the kid. Okay, that was pretty easy. Let's see. And here's one more. We'll look at one more on the questionable side.
That's a little bit of a forearm.
I've got warning, right? I don't have warning.
I think that's a flow.
Yeah, that's a forearm shiver.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't know if it's 2 minutes. I think that's a personal foul.
I mean, certainly you got to go a minute with at least on that. You know, I mean, I think there you can go with an illegal body check because he swung his arm, unnecessary. I mean, if you're going to go to the head, it's got to be a blow to the head, which is going to be an illegal body check. Okay, you can't do unnecessary roughness, but certainly you got to put the kid in for a minute. Okay, he more than just created a little bit of space with his hand and found that advantage.
So the rule book defines award as directing the player's stick or love, right? That's right.
Not throwing him into the next hemisphere.
Can you throw more time?
Yep. And this will be up. I'll have this presentation up on the website tomorrow. Okay. Pretty easy one. And again, we got to be in the right position to make that. If we're not hustling in our mechanics, that's going to happen in the middle of the field, and you're going to see a kid go flying, and you're gonna look at the other guy and wait for him, and you're looking at the other guy and wait for him, and you might end up with no flag. So that's a perfect example too of why we have to be in the right position. All right. We're out of time, so if you have any other situations or questions that you want to cover, send those to me. Is there anything anybody else needs to discuss before we go? Good job. Make sure you sign in. Make sure you get all your requirements done. We will see you on the 13th. CR for our on-field.